Hiya folks, welcome to the show. My name's the Gliding Gladiator and it's my mission to infodump about everything Disney animation on the internet. And it's the moment you've all been waiting for. I'm finally doing an Iceberg video. That's right, I've completely sold out. Now, this might seem like I'm just trying to capitalize on a vastly dying trend for the sake of relevancy and views. So for those that don't know, an iceberg is a variation on a tier list that is geared towards a specific fandom for a piece of media. So when you start at the top, you have the things that most of the people outside the fandom know about, then as you go down you get to the things only the really hardcore fans understand. So that begs the question, what iceberg am I covering? This week marks the 33rd anniversary of Oliver & Company, which is just incredibly weird. I mean, it only feels like we were celebrating the film's 30th anniversary 3 years ago. And since it just so happens to be my favourite movie of all time, and perhaps the only reason this channel exists, I figured it would be a fun time to talk about some aspects of the film that people might not be aware of. This iceberg was made by the wonderful Sebastian Cordova, who, maybe you haven't heard him by that name, but you've definitely heard him by his other alias, Disney TVA News. He's also perhaps the only person on the planet who could love Oliver & Company just as much as me. Though I still win out on that front. I mean, just look at these wise financial decisions. So yeah, let's kick things off at the top level, which for those people playing at home is the things that most people are probably gonna know about, based on a Charles Dickens novel. Yes, so for those not in the know, Oliver & Company was based on Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist, which it really surprises me how few people actually seem to know that, even though they use that in all the film's marketing and all the characters' names are ripped directly from the book, and these are not common names. So yeah, if you didn't know that Oliver & Company was based on a classic work of English literature, now you know. Okay, next up we have Howard Ashman, which is a name that most people, especially Disney fans, should have heard of, as he is basically responsible for modern Disney musicals, as he is the person who wrote the music for The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, started off Aladdin, and his influence is still felt in the company to this very day. And Oliver & Company was actually the first ever Disney movie he wrote songs for. Howard Ashman was brought in to write the film's opening number and prologue, Once Upon a Time in New York City, due to Howard's connection to New York. And that directly led to him getting hired to write the music for The Little Mermaid and then Beauty and the Beast after it. So yeah, Under the Sea, Be Our Guest, Friend Like Me, you've got Oliver & Company to thank for all of them. Real company products in the movie. Now, this is referring to the fact that obviously it's New York, so to authentically portray New York City in the 80s, you needed Coca-Cola advertisements, you needed Sony billboards, and I have seen a lot of people deride this kind of product placement when honestly, here I feel it was necessary because like I said, they had to authentically portray New York City in the 80s and it just wouldn't really have that same impact if they had a bunch of parody brand names. The Gong Show. I have previously discussed The Gong Show in my video from last year, The Lost Legacy of Oliver & Company, which if you haven't checked that out yet, maybe go do that. So basically, The Gong Show was an event held at Disney Animation during the mid-80s, in which they gathered all the creative people into one room so they could just rapid-fire ideas as, you know, creatively and financially, the studio was very much struggling. And if the executives liked an idea that one of the animators or directors brought to the table, they would hit the gong to symbolize that, you know, this is a good idea, we should move forward with this. And Oliver Twist with dogs was the first ever idea at the Gong Show to get picked up. Oliver and the Dodger. That was the original name of the movie during production, and not gonna lie, I kind of wish they kept that name, as that kind of implies it was going to be a lot more focused on Oliver and Dodger's friendship, which is the heart of the movie and the reason I personally love it, and would have liked a lot more development of that in the finished movie, but that's not what we're getting into right now. Released the same day as The Land Before Time. So basically this requires us going into the feud between Disney and Don Bluth that lasted from the mid-80s to the early 90s. So Don Bluth was a highly regarded Disney animator who worked with the studio during the Bronze Age. However, when he got to The Fox and the Hound, he started to not like the direction the studio was going in creatively. So he took himself and a bunch of animators and started his own studio to directly compete with Disney. And for a while, they actually started doing better than Disney, with their first movie, The Secret of Nim, outperforming The Black Cauldron, and An American Tail outperforming The Great Mouse Detective. The studio's third movie, The Land Before Time, was a collaboration with Steven Spielberg that released the same day that Oliver & Company did, November 18th, 1988. While upon initial opening weekend, The Land Before Time did outgross Oliver & Company in its box office, by the end of both their theatrical runs and including international revenue, Oliver & Company did make more money than The Land Before Time by the end. Because, as I have repeatedly stated, Oliver & Company for its time was very successful, actually being the first ever animated movie to worldwide gross over $100 million. If it had just another year of being in the spotlight, I imagine it would be a much highly regarded and more iconic film today. However, then The Little Mermaid released 364 days later and completely blew it out of the water, and here we are. 11 minutes of the film used computer-assisted imagery. This is most likely referring to the fact that Oliver & Company was the first ever Disney animated movie to have an entire department dedicated solely to computer animation, making it extremely important to animation history overall. Pretty much every single non-character or prop object in the film was made using computers, which includes all the vehicles in the streets as well as the construction equipment. Next up, we have awards. So, following its original theatrical run, Oliver & Company received 3 award nominations, of which it won 1. It received a Golden Globe nomination for the song Why Should I Worry, written by Charlie Midnight and Dan Hartman. It was nominated for a Young Artist Award in the category of Best Family Animation or Fantasy Motion Picture, and the only award it actually won was a Golden Reel Award for its sound editing, which isn't really the first aspect of the movie that sticks out to me, but fair play to them. Next up is merch. Now, the merchandise situation when it comes to Oliver & Company is quite complicated and has been a strenuous tale over the years. Basically, when the film was released, obviously Disney gave it this huge push with a whole line of merchandise that was just, absolutely amazing, and most of it is very rare now, which is sad for me. But then throughout the 90s, it kind of stuck around in a sense, but it took a long time for the movie to get released onto VHS, which was when that really gave it another push. It was included in a few, McDonald's series of just various Disney animated characters, and then moving into the 2000s, that's when it really just stopped out of nowhere. That's when it really became a point where, every 5 or so years, you'll get a few pieces here and there, but that's about it. And then when we started getting towards the end of the 2010s, that's when you started seeing this slight change in how Disney has treated the property. Basically because all those people who grew up watching Oliver & Company now have disposable income, so Disney are a lot more comfortable with releasing new merchandise at a steady rate, which is mainly thanks to the company Loungefly, who has been supplying us with a ton of wallets, pins, bags, just, everything I could have ever dreamed of growing up as a kid. And the very last thing for the tip of the iceberg is the original storyline was about rescuing a panda. So in the original outline for Oliver & Company, there was also obviously going to be all the stuff with Oliver and Dodger and everything, but it was mainly going to focus on the characters stealing a panda from a zoo in order to pay off their debts, which would have definitely turned the movie into more of a farce than what it ended up being, so I'm very happy we got what we did get, and this was left on the cutting room floor. Okay, and we have made it to the second level, and it starts off with Dog's point of view perspective. So in order to properly capture, a dog's eye view of the world, the animators visited New York and they got about 12 inches off the ground to take images of, how the world looks from that far down, so they could really get that across in the animation. Why Should I Worry won a Golden Globe Award. I've already discussed that, so we'll just move on from there. Other dogs from other Walt Disney Animation Studios movies make cameos. So this is obviously referring to the film's most famous scene, the sequence with the song Why Should I Worry, which does feature quite a few cameos. Cameos on the House of Mouse. So for those that don't know, even though I have talked about it a few times on the channel, House of Mouse was an early 2000s animated series that was about Mickey and friends putting on this cartoon comedy nightclub where they invited all the characters from every single Disney Animation Studios movie up until that point. The show itself was mainly about Mickey and friends trying to run the club and deal with adversities as Pete tries very underhanded tactics in order to shut their club down. But the main thing that most people got out of the show is looking for the obscure Disney cameos in the background. And as an Oliver & Company fan, House of Mouse did keep me somewhat satiated. I mean, they got a few cameos, they appeared in the theme song, and they even gave Dodger a full musical number in the episode Pluto Saves the Day, even though the song itself does betray Dodger's character as it was portrayed in the original movie, but I'll take what I can get. Planned to be a sequel to The Rescuers. This is actually one of the few bits of background information we have on the production of the movie available to us. During very early drafts of the film, there was this idea of it being a potential sequel to The Rescuers, following Penny and Rufus as they start a new life in New York City. Different voice actors considered for Dodger and the company. Basically, because we know Oliver & Company was the first ever animated movie with an all-star celebrity voice cast, originally those roles were going to be given to other celebrities. So Tom Cruise was offered the role of Dodger, Patrick Stewart was offered the role of Francis, and Rita was originally going to be played by Whitney Houston until the role was given to Cheryl Lee Raff instead, with Ruth Pointer doing the singing voice. And the final things we have on level 2 are debate if it should count as part of the Disney Renaissance and influence the Disney Renaissance. And since those two things kind of go together, I'll just cover them in one. So I believe there are a few factors that should lead to Oliver & Company being considered the official start of the Disney Renaissance. Which, for those that don't know, the Disney Renaissance is a period between the late 80s and mid-90s where Disney released a string of commercially and critically successful movies that essentially put them back on the map. And one of the biggest components of the Disney Renaissance is Howard Ashman and his music and his principles, which still carried on even after he passed away during the production of Beauty and the Beast. Ashman working on Oliver & Company is directly what led to him working on The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and starting work on Aladdin, and without Oliver & Company, those movies just wouldn't exist as we know them today. The film's success also helped reinstate Disney's faith in its animation division, as at this time Disney feature animation really was at its knees, as the Black Cauldron had just almost entirely destroyed the division. It was on the brink of being shut down, the animators were forced off the studio lot, things weren't looking good. The Great Mouse Detective was a decent success, but it was Oliver & Company that really had Disney executives going, okay, this is good, we can keep doing this. And we are now on the 3rd level, which means I should probably start trying to pick up the pace a bit. Oliver doesn't have a name until Jenny finds him. Yeah, that is certainly an aspect of the movie. Okay, Jenny's birthday is on April 23rd. Actually, I'm not sure if that's true, because in Rasco and DeSoto's introductory scene, we see a calendar that reads April 21st, and the film, the main events of the film take place over the course of 3 days, so that would put Jenny's birthday on April 24th. But then again, the timeline of the film overall isn't really too consistent, so, I can't really blame you for thinking on that. Oliver was going to be a dog. Yep, that is in fact true. Obviously, it being an animated movie, they go through a lot of different versions of the story. And in earlier versions, it was a lot closer to Oliver Twist in terms of the characters' ages. Oliver was going to be a dog, and he and Dodger were actually going to be around the same age. But then, while they started working on it more, the writers kind of came to this conclusion that making Oliver a cat really makes him a lot more sympathetic. Francis and Georgette eat chocolate. Yes, that is true. During the movie, the characters Francis and Georgette are shown eating chocolate, which, you know, I'm sure we all know is poisonous to dogs, but that's just Disney movie magic for you. Theatrical re-releases. Oliver and Company was re-released in 1996, March 1996, just before the film made it to home video, which it took a really long time for the movie to get a VHS release, which, I can't lie, might definitely be a defining factor of its continued irrelevancy when it comes to the Disney brand. Because, you know, it hasn't really been in people's homes for that long, so it didn't really get a time to really sit in the public consciousness. Ratkin cameo. So, yes, the main villain from The Great Mouse Detective, he makes a cameo in this movie in the sequence Perfect Isn't Easy. Behind her, you see, like, a bunch of photos of various dogs that are meant to be, like, her various admirers, and for whatever reason, Ratkin is hidden among them. There is also debate, going back to that scene, whether or not Scooby-Doo also appears in one of the photos in Georgette's bedroom, but I'm not really sure. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I'm not really sure they would put that in there, but at the same time, it's because, like, all those pictures are, like, very small and, you know, quite far away. They're not very detailed, so it kind of... I think it could just be a case of, you know, some people say it looks like Scooby-Doo, so people's minds trick them into thinking it is Scooby-Doo, but, I'll leave that one up to you. Georgette is a favourite character from Bette Midler. Yep, that is true. In many interviews, Bette Midler has said that Georgette is one of her favourite roles she has ever played, which is saying a lot because, you know, it's Bette Midler. Who is Rex? Is it's a line from the movie and a reference to the scene where Dodger and the gang meet Georgette.
Excuse me, sister, who's Rex?
None of your business.
And in Perfect Isn't Easy, we see that Rex is the admirer that Georgette has the most fondness for. However, we don't really get any more information outside of that, as, you know, he doesn't appear in the movie because we only have a 70-minute runtime. The movie takes place over 5 days. Yes, that is in fact true, because the opening number, Once Upon a Time in New York City, is a montage that takes place the previous day. Then the next day you have Oliver meeting Dodger and everyone. Then the next day it's the start of the ticking clock 3 days time frame for them to, you know, pay back the loan shark. So, you know, you have that, and then, as I've said, Jenny's birthday falls on April 24th. So, yeah, you know, the whole timeline, it rounds out to about 5 days. Okay, here's a fun one. Oliver plush toys mistaken as Goose the cat from Captain Marvel. That's new information to me. I mean, hold on, let me just... Are they talking about, like, this one they released at the Disney Store in 2018? Because, it's kind of obvious this one comes from Oliver and Company. But, yeah, no, if that is in fact true, just kind of goes to show, you know, what little recollection of this movie the general public has. Rasco and DeSoto lookalikes on the Italian series Slash. I did try and do some research on this, however, I kind of came up empty-handed on that front, so I will just have to take your word for it. However, there is a Doberman on Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. I don't know which episode it was. That's probably a cameo. Okay, and closing out level 3, we have McDonald's tie-in toys. Now, there were actually 2 sets of McDonald's tie-in toys for Oliver and Company. First off, we have this set that was from the movie's original release. That's these finger puppets of Oliver, Dodger, Georgette, and Francis. So, you know, those are pretty cool. You don't really get a lot of Francis merchandise, so, you know. Then, oh god, we also have these, which I have not removed these from the original packaging because I am a nerd. But these were made to commemorate the film's VHS release. Yeah, so those are the McDonald's tie-in toys. There is also, they did like this Disney like masterpiece collection, I think it's called, where it was like VHS boxes, and inside there was a figure, and they had a Dodger one of those for Oliver and Company. So, you know, I think that's the extent of the Oliver and Company promotion at McDonald's. Oh, no, I am an idiot. I am a complete and utter idiot, because I also forgot about the singing Christmas ornaments they did during the film's release year, which, sadly I don't have, because they are very expensive to get in their original boxes. But, I'll get them someday, and I can show them off then. Right, and we have moved it on to level 4, meaning we are halfway through. Okay, so one of the classic Walt Disney Animation Studios films to not have a Disney Toon Studio sequel. Yeah, I mean, I have said before that if they had kept the practice going just a few more years, I feel like we would have gotten both an Oliver and Company and Great Mouse Detective direct-to-DVD sequel, because, I mean, we got The Fox and the Hound. It's like, you know, there wasn't really any excuse after that. Released on Mickey Mouse's birthday. That is in fact true. Oliver and Company, you know, November 18th, we also know that as the day that Steamboat Willie made its grand public debut. And because of that, Oliver and Company is always forced to play second fiddle. So, you know, even on its anniversary, it's a complete gamble whether or not Disney's, like, Twitter accounts are even going to acknowledge the movie, which is just kinda sad, honestly. One of the Disney movies with the most graphic deaths. Yeah, definitely. You know, the final scene, which has, you know, the car chase in the subway, which, straight away, that is one of just the coolest final battles of any movie I have ever seen. But, yeah, so, you know, the main villain himself straight on collides with the train and just explodes, and then his henchmen, who, you know, are dogs, get thrown off the back of a moving car onto electrocuted railroad tracks. Disney in the late 80s. You gotta love it. And here we have Fagin's real reason to ask Sykes for money. This is mainly just referring to the fact that, you know, in the movie we never get a clear... There's not a lot of backstory really given in the movie, so we don't really know how the characters got into this situation. It's just a case of, okay, we're here now, let's get out of it. So we're never really given a, like, you know, how Fagin originally asked Sykes for money, like where this all started, but like I said, 70-minute runtime, not too many opportunities to add all that in. Jenny ignored by her parents. So Oliver and Company does play into that trope of, you know, the rich kid whose parents are always away in business and just wants to spend time with them, which the film uses to make Jenny a sympathetic character to justify ripping Oliver away from his found family, but this is not the time for that right now. But one thing I found always funny is that Jenny just has, like, you know, this it's very much a standard 80s kid's bedroom. Georgette, their dog, has, like, you know, this marble bedroom with these velvet cushions everywhere, this amazing vanity mirror. I just find it really funny. I just find it incredibly funny. Jenny and Penny are related. This is obviously referring to the fact that Oliver and Company was originally going to be a sequel to The Rescuers, which we've already discussed, and this is why, you know, Jenny and Penny share a lot of, not even just, like, their names rhyme, but they also share a lot of visual similarities. First Disney animated media to showcase kidnapping on a serious case? I'm gonna have to disagree on that front, because, I mean... Yeah, we do have The Great Mouse Detective, which is specifically about, you know, solving a kidnapping. Lastly, for level 4, we have what happened to Oliver's brothers and sisters. So obviously, you know, the start of the movie, the scene, everyone loves. During Once Upon a Time in New York City, we see all of Oliver's siblings get, picked up and adopted while he's the runt of the litter, basically, and no one wants him. So yeah, that's basically just saying that, after all those other cats just, get picked up and just carried off, it's like, we never see them again. Alright, we are on to level 5. Deleted scenes and production art are lost media. This is referring to the fact, another thing I brought up in my original video, talking about how, during the making of Oliver and Company, the artists found it a very stress-relieving exercise to take the storyboards and deleted scenes from the movie, that, the things that they aren't using, and destroy them. Because Oliver and Company was on the tail end of Disney before they started actually caring about preserving all the production work of their films. So, everything from this point, like Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, all those films, we just have so much information about, the behind-the-scenes production. We've got documentaries, we've got, deleted scenes, concept art, all this. We don't really have that for Oliver and Company. I would have really loved to see those deleted scenes, but I guess we never will. Movie has been neglected by Disney over its 33 years. I feel that's kind of self-explanatory. I don't feel I have to go into that because this whole video I've just been reiterating just how poorly Disney has treated this property in its, over 3 decades of existence. Kingdom Hearts, this is most likely referring to the fact, people want Oliver and Company representation in the Kingdom Hearts series, which, yeah, I mean, if that happens, that'd probably be my kick to actually start playing through the entire series, but, yeah, full support on that front. Give me some Oliver and Company representation in Kingdom Hearts. People at Disney see it as another typical animal movie. Yeah, that's kind of a thing in, the years following the movie, when it came out, everyone at Disney was pumped about it, because like I said, it really, revitalized their faith in animation as a medium for storytelling. And now in recent years, it's more like they don't look back on it as fondly, in a sense. There isn't any rose-colored glasses. Every single Disney animated movie is a masterpiece in some sense. Even the ones that, people hate the most, like Home on the Range and The Black Cauldron, you have to appreciate those aren't just things that were made to generate a quick buck. That is 4 to 6 years of just hundreds of artists pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into every single frame. It's also why I find the remakes to just be an insult to animation as a medium, but I've got to stop getting sidetracked and just finish this iceberg. Never before seen concept art on sites like eBay. Yeah, on auction sites, that's where you're gonna find a lot of, the new concept art that occasionally pops up. It's a few years, we had basically nothing, and now we've got a little bit more than nothing. Let's say that, like I said, we have a few more, deleted storyboard panels, we've got some more early concept art, character design sheets. It's not much, but it's something. Disney Parks meet and greets. So, I think one of the most famous images of this is obviously the Oliver and Company parade float from when the movie first came out. The appearances of the walk-around Oliver and Company characters has been very spotty over the years. When I was younger, I still do have it, but I used to watch this, Walt Disney World, informational video. When they start showing Hollywood studios, there is a moment in which you can see the Dodger walk-around mascot. So, I was just completely bewildered why that was there. And also, made me kind of hopeful that maybe it'd still be there, but obviously that's not the case. Jenny is adopted. I'm guessing that's some kind of fan theory, because honestly, that's completely new to me. definitely warrants further discussion than I can give it right now. Okay, and wrapping up level 5, we have Sykes' plans with kidnapping Jenny. I think this is kind of referring to the fact that, you know, there isn't really a plan, in a sense. The idea is that Sykes kidnaps Jenny to hold her ransom to, you know, get back the money he's lost. But there kind of really isn't a plan with it. And if there is a plan, it's not well thought out at all. Okay, tier 6. Fagin does drugs. Alright, we're just gonna gloss over that one and move right along. The film's soundtrack hasn't been released on digital. Has it not? Because over here on the UK, it's like, we do have it digitally. I have it on pretty much every single device I own. Animated deleted scenes as lost media. I've already discussed that. Before Frozen, the movie was the last Disney film to get a vinyl release. Yeah, Oliver and Company was the last Disney movie to be released on a vinyl record until Frozen came along. And even then, you know, that's just because, like, today, like, vinyl records are very much a novelty. They're a collector's item. Oliver and Company was, like, the last properly commercially widely released vinyl record. Okay, here's a really good one. The dark opening with DeSoto, Roscoe, and Dodger. So, basically, another one of the few tidbits we've gotten on another earlier draft of the movie is there was going to be a much darker opening. Originally, the film was going to be about Roscoe and DeSoto killing Oliver's parents and basically Oliver's quest for revenge, which, that just makes me heartbroken that no deleted scenes or anything survived, because even though I think I prefer what we have, I would give anything to see that cut of the movie, honestly. Because Oliver and Company is perhaps Disney's... After The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Oliver and Company is Disney's darkest animated feature. And I would love to have seen it even darker. But, yeah, moving on. Okay, and then we have 2 more headcanons with Rita used to belong to Sykes and Einstein was the first pet of Fagin. You know, this is a sentiment I have seen echoed in pretty much every fanfiction I read when I was younger. So, you know, it's this very prevalent idea in the fandom, but there's, like, nothing in the canon text that suggests it. Okay, and we have moved on to the final level of the iceberg. Okay, awful, famous, and hated animator commenting on the film. I think we all know who this is referring to, and if you don't, I deeply envy you. But I'm not touching that with a 50-foot pole, so moving on. Sykes involved with the Mafia or Dark Market. Another headcanon, although yes, it is very obvious that Sykes is a mobster. I mean, that is literally how he's referred to as in the film synopsis. Shelved live-action remake with Ice Cube? I think that's more of like a conspiracy theory, because I'm fairly sure I would have come across something like that if we had, like, concrete details on anything like that, because the day they announce an Oliver and Company live-action remake is the day I resign from society. And finally we have why Disney hasn't made an animated TV series in the 33-year existence of the film. Beats me! Would have been amazing if they did. Like I said, had Oliver and Company gotten just a year to have the spotlight to itself before The Little Mermaid came along, before Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, if it had just a little more time to really set into the public consciousness as an amazing, culturally relevant movie, I think it would have gotten a cheap 80s TV series with a shoestring budget animation. I think it would have gotten a direct-to-DVD sequel. I think it would have more representation in the parks, more merchandise. But, you know, that's business. And once Little Mermaid came along, like, there wasn't really much of a point in going back to it. I had a lot of fun filming this, but then again, you know, it's impossible for me to not have fun talking about my favourite movie of all time. But, you know, I don't know if I did this whole iceberg thing correctly. Maybe I made a lot of really big mistakes and didn't plan this through properly, but it's it is what it is. Again, I just want to give thanks to Sebastian Cordova for making this iceberg and giving me permission to cover it. I'll be leaving a link to both his personal Twitter account as well as the Disney TVA news account in the description and comments down below, so be sure to go check those out. If you happen to be new around here, feel free to subscribe and comment down below as it helps me out a whole lot. Also, liking the video wouldn't hurt either. And as always, a huge massive thank you to the wonderful, beautiful souls Charles Dugan and Kayla Babington for supporting me over on Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the future of this channel or me as a creator, you can do so by heading over and becoming a member of my Patreon, which will be linked in the description and comments down below. But of course, it's entirely optional, and I greatly appreciate every single person who watches and enjoys my content. Thanks so much for watching, folks, and I'll see ya real soon.